Hey guys, it's Kevin, another movie for guys. Reviewing this movie, I definitely was very excited to see. I really didn't know too much about it going into it, but I definitely was really looking forward to see it. And that movie is none other than Fences. Yes, I am reviewing the movie, not the play. I know the play came out, I believe, several years ago, but I'm going to be reviewing the movie in this video. Now, speaking of the movie, I was definitely very interested in this movie, especially from that first trailer and that incredible scene between Denzel Washington and the dude that played his son, which we'll talk about him in a second. But that immediately just had me hooked in. I definitely was really looking forward to seeing how this movie was really going to be, and I tried to stay away from certain things. I didn't really know a ton about it, and I'm glad I didn't, because I have to say that overall, while Fences is a very flawed movie, it's not at all a perfect movie. I overall really did love Fences. I think it's a very, very well done movie that's quite unconventional and is very different than probably most movies you're going to watch this year, but I really did enjoy it overall. But let's get to the plot of Fences, which the plot of Fences, this is a very complex movie, and I'm trying to keep this as vague as possible because I don't want you guys to know a ton of stuff going in this movie. But basically, we focus on Denzel Washington, who plays Troy Maxson, and he is a waste collector that works alongside his best friend Jim Bono, and he's trying to provide for his family in like the best way possible. And he's had a very tough life, to say the least, and he has a really great family, very much supports him, but things starts to go sour once he realizes that his son wants to follow a line of work in his career that has kind of plagued him and that he's kind of tried to steer away from, and he pretty much does all he can to try to plague his son's life to keep him from, achieving something that he really doesn't want to do, and that's basically a plot of Fences overall. But let's just get in this movie, starting off with the cast. And that's the thing that definitely had me very excited for this movie, was the acting. I very much like all the actors in this movie. And let's first talk about Denzel Washington, who was a powerhouse in this movie. I mean, talk about an incredible role. This is by far one of Denzel Washington's best performances. He absolutely killed it as his character, Troy Maxson, who is a very complex character, and there's a lot of stuff going on with him. Troy is someone who, he's had a very tough life, and he's done some things that are quite questionable, but really, he is trying to provide for his family, and there are times in this movie where you really do see where Troy's coming from. You're like, oh, this is a great guy who's a great father, and he's a great husband, and he's doing all this great stuff for his family, and, you're really rooting for him, and then there are times where he'll just switch, and you think, this guy is a monster. I mean, he really is. There's so much stuff in his life, and he's very, very egocentric in this way that I really haven't seen before, and I thought he overall did a really, really incredible job in this movie. He has so many long monologues, and they work really, really well for the most part. I thought he did a really good job. He's definitely going to get an Oscar nomination, and I'd be very surprised if he doesn't, because he was definitely incredible here. I thought his character was really, really great, and definitely was very well written. You can tell why he won the Tony for this performance. You definitely can tell. Viola Davis, though, that is the real star of this movie. As good as Denzel Washington is, I think Viola Davis gave the best performance in this movie as Rose. I mean, Rose is one of the most sympathetic characters I have seen all year. There's so much interesting stuff going on with her, and she is arguably just as struggling, just as much as Troy is. She's probably in a worse position than he is, and there's so much stuff going on throughout their marriage. You can tell their marriage is kind of very rocky, though they continue to support each other. She endlessly supports him, even though she might not have wanted to. There's some great backstory between their relationship overall, and I thought she just did an incredible job. And she had about 2 standout scenes that either of them are Oscar-worthy. They were just nail-gripping. I was so into everything that she was doing. I mean, this is someone who is so into her performance that at times I didn't feel like she was playing a character. I felt like this was her true emotion, and that is when you know an actress is giving it her all. Viola Davis was just so great in this movie. I loved seeing her here, and I really think she could possibly get Best Actress for this movie. She really was incredible. I love what she did here, and the chemistry between these two is very rough throughout the film because they do have a very rough marriage, but you see why these two would end up together, why they would have taken this road together, even though you can tell that this isn't exactly what neither of them really want. You can understand why these two want to be together. You can understand why they love each other in the way they do, and really the support they have have for each other. And the way the movie does that, I thought was really well done and really did add to the heartbreak that eventually goes down later into the film. And then the rest of the cast I thought was also really great. Stephen McKinley Henderson, Stephen, however you pronounce his name, as Jim Bono is Troy's best friend who works alongside him. And they have some really fun scenes together. He serves very much as the comic relief of the film. There's a lot of real fun moments between these two, and you definitely can see why these two are great friends. But he also provides some great insights on what these fences are really all about and why they keep building fences. And I thought there's this great scene especially, and I don't know if it's in the trailer, I think it was, but they talks about building fences and why people do it, and it was really, really insightful, and he did a really good job with that performance overall. I thought he definitely was really good. Even though I didn't care too much about his character, I thought overall he definitely was really great here. But Javon Adipo as Corey Maxon, I really think is the underrated performance of this movie. As good as Denzel and Viola were, no one has really talked about Javon. I think he's kind of on the same level, these two. I mean, this is an incredibly, very, very emotional performance that involves a lot of deep layers that I think, Adipo was very up to the task for. I mean, this is someone who, again, he's going into, this is Troy's son who is trying to pursue a career that Troy really did not have much success with, and that he's trying to, steer his son away from, and you can tell that they have a very rough relationship. As much as Corey supports his father and understands why his father is the way he is, he holds a lot of disdain for him because there are times where his father will treat him like an object. He really is. I mean, we all saw that scene in the trailer where he asks his father, "Do you love me and do you like me?" And he talks about, "Why do I have to like you?" But you cannot, kind of make compelling arguments for both sides. You can understand why Corey is so against his father, and you can understand why Troy is so, has such tough love against his son. You can understand that. And I thought the animosity between these two was so well realized. There is this one incredible scene with them towards the end of the movie, and I had no idea what was going to happen there. I thought he did an incredible job. The direction they take with this character is one that's very heartbreaking, but one that's also very well earned. I love the direction that he went towards the end of this movie, and I think it was just really, really satisfying. Again, not a ton of people have talked about him, but I thought he did a really, really great job, as did the whole cast. I think everyone really did a great job here, especially a cast that's so small. There's only about 7 actors in this entire movie, but I really think everyone did a really great job. I thought everyone really gave it their all, and definitely these are some of the best performances I've seen all year by far. So now let's get to the directing here, which is actually directed by Denzel Washington. I thought for the most part he did a really great job. Something that I was very happy with is that he didn't try to Hollywoodize this in any way. This feels very much like a very self-contained stage play, and it should. I mean, the stage play itself is very, very successful. I've heard many people say it's one of the best stage plays written, so I can totally understand why Denzel kept it the way he did, and I thought he did that really, really well with this movie. And the way that this goes from comedic to dramatic in a second is done really, really well, because, like I said, there are a ton of monologues that go on and on and on, and sometimes you'll hear something and you're like, okay, that's really funny, but then someone will say something that might just not seem right, and you immediately it turns very dramatic, and it starts to become a lot more than what you thought. And I thought the way that Denzel helmed that was really well done in terms of the directing. I will admit there were a couple scenes that maybe were a little bit too over dramatic, but I thought his tone for the most part stayed intact. I was very locked into the story, and that's something I thought was really well done in terms of the directing. Now, the screenplay is really where I start to have a couple issues with the film, because while I did love the overall story, the story in general does take a little while to get going. There is a lot of exposition given in this film, and it's all told. There's no shown in this movie, and I get that. I get that obviously you can't really show things in a stage play. It's much harder to do that than you can in a movie, and anyone will tell you that. I mean, in my theater arts class, we had to come up with like a whole a 15-minute play, and I'm going to share this with you guys. I think it's relevant to this movie, where it included a ton of flashbacks, and basically, our my theater teacher told us that you can't do that you just can't really have flashbacks in a stage play. It doesn't work as well as it does in a movie. It feels a little bit out of place, and it's kind of hard to differentiate the difference between, a flashback and a movie. And while they could have done that here, I get why they did it the way they did. I understood that, but I will say I think some of the monologues did go on a bit too long. long. I mean, there were points where I'm listening to the monologues and he's talking about his father or something about him in prison or just something really silly, and I'm like, what's going on here? Why are we really hearing about this? What does this really have to do with the rest of the movie? And some of it just didn't really work for me. I thought some of it could have wrapped up a little bit. They could have easily cut them down just a little bit, maybe just 2 minutes shorter or something like that, 5 minutes shorter. I'm not really sure, but I do think some of the monologues went on a bit too long. But I did appreciate the movie was very small in scale. Like I said, this is a film that only has about 7 actors, and you definitely do feel that throughout the entire film. It's a very intimate film, and I thought they did that really, really well with the screenplay. And I thought the way that the screenplay was written here, I thought was really well done. I heard this is pretty much word for word the same screenplay as the movie. And again, I'm happy about that. I'm glad they didn't try to change stuff. I always get upset when they change stuff from the screen, stage play to the movie screen. I get that sometimes it's hard to do, but with something like this, you really don't have to do that. And I thought that worked really well with the story. And the story that's revealed once it does come up is overall very, very compelling. I was very locked into it. You can understand why Troy is against his son doing what he does, why he doesn't want his son to do this, and it brings up some really compelling arguments. That Troy, in general, doesn't want his son to, be better than he is, and that Troy doesn't want him to have a better life, and things like that I found to be so damn compelling. Again, this is something where sometimes you're rooting for this character because you get where he's coming from, and other times you're like, you're a horrible father. Why don't you want your son to have a great life? And I constantly found myself going back and forth with his character throughout the whole movie, and it's really just an example of really great writing, and that's something I thought was really well done with the writing, definitely. And also, like I said, the story of the marriage, the way that they build things up, I thought was really good. I love the way they build things up throughout the movie, but there is a lot of build-up. In fact, I'd say the first hour kind of takes an hour, really, for the story to really get going. But once it got going, I was very well locked into it. I really thought it worked really well. And the second that we had that first scene between Troy and Corey, that's really when I got into this movie. And from there, I was in, definitely. I thought that worked really well, and I thought the screenplay was definitely very well realized in that regard. That's something I thought they did really well. I thought that the story was just really well told, and it's a very sad story, too. My only other complaint, really, when it comes to Fences with the screenplay is that there is a huge, and I mean huge, plot revelation that changes almost the entire movie in this end of the second act, and while this is a really well done revelation, it's really the only thing that I think the movie would have benefited a little bit more from if we saw some stuff of it throughout the rest of the movie, because the movie treats it like it's this huge deal, and it is a big deal, but we don't really see a ton of it throughout the movie, and it's more of just this huge reveal that kind of came out of nowhere, and I feel like it would have made a little more sense if maybe we saw some of this revelation and, the twist that happens throughout the movie, and I thought they just could have done a better job with that. And I will admit there were about 1 or 2 scenes in this movie that did get a little bit too overdramatic. There are 2 scenes in the second act where Denzel Washington starts to talk to objects in this really animated way, and I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was really silly. I really did. In fact, I kind of laughed at one scene in the movie. I get what they were trying to do. I just didn't really think it worked in a movie in a way it does in a stage play. In a stage play, you have very limited scenery and things like that. Sometimes it's harder to do that stuff, but I felt in this movie, it just didn't really work in the way it probably does in the stage play. I could see it working incredibly well in the stage play, but it just didn't really work in the movie, and that's something I thought definitely did kind of deter the film a little bit. Other than that, though, I thought the cinematography here was great. I thought the way that the film looked, you felt like you were in the 1950s. You felt like you were trapped in this house, and that's something I thought was very interesting, is that this house in general is not really a house of happiness. It's kind of a house of misery, and especially as the movie starts to go on, you feel like you just can't get away from this house. You're constantly being brought back there, and the way they did that, again, I thought just really showed how focused the movie really was, and the way that the fences play a role in this movie, again, is very metaphoric, and it wasn't really something I was expecting, but I thought was interesting the way they did that. The score, I thought, also was really good. It's not used a ton, but when the score is going on, it's really well done here, and the editing, like I said, I think there were some scenes that maybe went on a bit too long, but other than that, guys, I really have no more complaints. I thought that the editing was really good for the most part. I was very well into the story, and once the story got going, then I very much found myself into the film. And even though there were those 3 scenes in the third act that I said were a little bit too overly cheesy, I did feel the ending of this movie is one of the most satisfying ends I've seen to any movie this year, and really went with this great message that the entire film has that's really about choices and how when you make a choice, that's it. That choice is made, you can't go back to it, and you have to basically face the consequences of that choice you've made. And that's something that every single character has to do in this film. It's something that every character deals with throughout the film, and I think they did that very well done message throughout the entire film. And it was very well shown throughout pretty much everything that was going on. So overall, guys, Fences is not at all a perfect movie, but it is a movie that I'm sure is going to get a lot of Oscar love. I could definitely see this movie getting a ton of Oscar nominations and possibly even some wins that I definitely very well respect. It is a very well done story. It does have some scenes that go on a bit too long, but overall, I found the story to be very interesting. I found this to be a very risky film, and a film that definitely is very different than other stage plays that actually did keep it pretty faithful to the stage, to the stage play, which I thought was quite interesting the way the movie did that, because so many movies nowadays, they want to change it up. They want to try to adapt it for a movie audience or want to try to adapt it for a TV audience, and that's why NBC's live musicals don't usually go really well, because they try to make it very TV-ish, and that's not really what you need to do. This shows what you need to do is you can do a stage adaptation, but you just need to keep that emotion. You need to retain that emotion. You need to retain the actors. You need to retain that spirit that the original, work had. And I thought they did that really well here. And because of that, I am going to give Fences a 4.5 out of 5 or an A-. Not a perfect movie in any way, but some really great performances, a really well done story, and a very well presented narrative that I'm definitely could see getting some Oscar films. And if you are looking for Oscar films, this is definitely a must in terms of movies you need to see before the year ends. So over, guys, my review of Fences. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall. I can definitely understand if someone didn't like this movie. It is a bit over long, I definitely will say. And I definitely did feel the length a little bit. I will definitely say that. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I only have a few more movie reviews to do for this year because, of course, the year is coming to a close. So I am going to start doing some top 10 lists. In fact, tomorrow I will be making my top 10 TV shows list. But stay tuned for my next video, which will actually be for a live stream, my very first collab, one of my very first collab TV reviews, for the first one I've done in a very long time, and that will be for the season of Fuller House with 22 Tiger Dude, who I've been watching every single episode with, and I will definitely be reviewing it with him, and I will see you guys for that. So, okay, bye.